Hi, we're Team 18 and we conducted a study on the bias present in search engines and its subsequent effect on human opinions. The internet has become a primary source of information in recent times and inevitably must be influencing people's opinions. So we wanted to examine the status of a prevalent bias in society within search engines. More specifically, we wanted to analyze the bias present in search engine results and further determine the effect of the ranking algorithm on the propagation of this bias. Then we conducted a survey to identify bias in people's minds, as well as the effect of these search engine results on this bias. The first step was collecting data. We scraped the web for images of various professional roles, half of which were male-dominated roles and the other half female-dominated roles. From this data, we calculated 3 types of biases. Input bias, which is bias directly seen in the image results. Ranking bias is the bias due to Google's ranking algorithm, and the output bias is the total bias, which is a combination of input and ranking bias. From here on, let's take the value 1 to represent female results, 0 is for neutral, and -1 is for male results. And so positive value represents bias towards females, and negative values represent bias towards males. So here we can see the ranking bias and input bias values for each role that we investigated. We see something interesting where in the input bias, which is based on the image results, even in the roles which have a positive value, which represent female biased roles, the same roles have a negative ranking bias, which shows that Google's ranking algorithm promotes images of male professionals even in the fields where the image results lean differently. This is a visual representation of the 3 biases for each role. We can see clearly this discrepancy between ranking bias and input bias on the right side, which represents the female-dominated roles. This further magnifies this unexpected result, where we see that the bias in female-dominated roles is lower than expected. We can see here how much each of the input and ranking biases affect the output bias. When we went further to analyze the relation between the input and ranking bias, we noticed an unexpected trend in which there was an increase in the bias of the ranking algorithm with a decrease in the bias based on search results. In other words, there is a negative correlation between these 2 biases. So coming to the second part of the study, which deals with the presence of bias in society, we wanted to design a survey that inquires about gender bias while also not making it too obvious as to avoid unnatural behavior. We made use of linguistics and provided a translation task to the participants. We gave them an English sentence containing a professional role, which was non-gendered, and asked them to translate to either Hindi or Telugu, which are gendered languages, and hence, from the choice of gender in the responses, we evaluated bias. There were 2 types of surveys. Half were direct translation tasks, while the other half, the task was preceded by the top image results on Google for that professional role. And by this, we can detect the effect of search results on internal bias. These are some of the sample responses in which we can see how gender bias is seen. This is a description of how the forms were structured and what they included. As we can see, one set included search images while the other didn't. In each set, we used a different percentage of female and male images. So based on the data collected from these surveys, which was then annotated, we can see that as the percentage of female images increase, there is a decrease in the percentage of responses which were male biased. Similarly, we can see that as we increase the number of male pictures across questions, there is an increase in the neutral and non-female responses. Here we see how the use of gender-neutral words also increase when the pictures are shown, which are some level of a mix between male and female images. These are the final numbers relating to the above trends. Overall, we observe that the images shown to people do play a role in the bias in their minds, and hence search engine results are crucial to regulating the bias in people's minds and society. And hence developers of such tools should take these effects into consideration and take the necessary steps to ensure that healthy and equal messages are propagated and not biased and uneven. Thank you.